This week's video is sponsored by Ohio, one of my fantastic friends and Patreon subscribers. If you guys would like to send him some love, he'll be in the description down below. He also has a channel about anime, manga, all sorts of fun Japanese stuff, so go give him some love. Alright, on to the video. The JLPT N2, or the Japanese Language Proficiency Test N2, is a test that tests, well, your language ability, your proficiency, as the title says. Beyond testing your language proficiency, it also happens to be a requirement for a bunch of jobs in Japan, in fact, probably like 90% to get visas beyond just English teaching. And also, since it opens up the vast majority of Japanese culture from manga and anime and video games and all the rest to you at N2 level, that's kind of where the focus of this video is going to stand. It also happens to be my goal, so I'm a little biased here. But this method works for any level, essentially, so just apply it to whatever level you're going to take. Now, I'm an honest man here. I want to say this up front. This is not a video teaching you how to learn Japanese. This is not at all for learning Japanese. I know plenty of people who have passed the JLPT who know very, very little about Japanese, and I know people who are damn near fluent who have a hard time passing. I also know there's a huge majority of you guys that actually plan to live in Japan long term, who don't want to teach English and succumb to hating your life every day. Not that there's anything wrong with English teaching, and that requires an N2. If you guys want to use what actual degree you got in college, if you have a career path that's different from teaching that you would just like to pursue in a different geography, this N2 can be that gateway. Not to mention, like, 90% of jobs won't even consider you unless you're at least this level. So this guide is strictly a study guide. It's not meant to help you learn the language. It's not meant to have you understand the language. This is to have you pass an arbitrary test to show that you know enough to not flail and cry in a closet when someone confronts you with real Japanese. In the same way that when you study for the ACT, you're not actually trying to know all of that knowledge for 10 years down the road. You're just trying to pass a test. This is the same thing. Don't use this as necessarily a method for study. There are attributes of this that can help you study, but do not use this as a learn Japanese method. This is a pass the N2 so I can now begin my long-term career method. You have been warned. Let's get into it. Now, according to the JLPT website, a passing score is broken down into two sections, a overall score and a section score. I'll actually have a nice little infographic here to help you guys. Now, for N2, the composition of all possible ranks is 180. So that means you can get 0 points all the way up to a perfect score of 180. Now, Chad, what's the passing? Well, the passing is 90. It's 50%. Now, the JLPT is tricky because you can get a 50% overall, but if you lack in any of the subsections here, you're not going to pass. Take, for instance, all three of these. The passing rate is 19. That means in each section, you need at least a 19 to be able to pass each section. Well, now, Chad, hey, I got at least 19 in each section. Does that mean I passed the whole test? Well, 19 in each section gives you, what, a 57? That's short of your 90, so you don't pass the overall, so you failed. So the key is to get 19 at least in each section, as well as getting over 90 as a whole on the totality of the test. So how do we achieve that in a year, as the title of this video says? What is all on the test, and how do we balance it out so that way we are well-rounded in each one of the three categories, as well as having a more than a 50% knowledge in total? Well, let's talk about that. The test contents break down into a couple different facets. There's really no way to practice adequate listening, so we're just gonna skip out on that for right now. You can forgive me, go watch a lot of Japanese television, stop watching anime with subtitles, go get Japanese friends. You guys have heard all my videos. If you guys are like, hey Chad, how do I practice listening? Go through any of the one of 187 videos I've made up until now. But we can talk content. So the JLPT has roughly, or at least N2, 6,000 words that you have to know to pass 100% basically. You also need to know about 3,000 kanjis. Now, the nice thing about the JLPT is there's no composition, so you don't have to write sentences, you don't have to do paragraphs or short stories, nothing like that. And you don't have to write kanji because this is completely computer graded. It is fill in the blank. So don't worry about kanji's writing. Only worry about the reading and the meanings of the kanjis when they're put together to form words. So that'll save you a whole third of learning kanji. Now, do you see why I said this isn't like a real, this isn't a language study method? This is a test passing method. You catch me? And the grammar varies site to site. The most complete one I can see is around 488 pieces. So we take that and break it down into half of each one of those numbers to hit the bare minimum knowledge that you'll need to be able to pass. What's the bare minimum? Well, divide by 2. This is basic math. 3,000 words, about 500 kanji readings and meanings, and about 244 different pieces of grammar. Now that seems a ton more doable, and if you're asking, hey Chad, what are resources I can use to learn said words and kanji and grammar? Check out any of my Japanese resource guides, check out any of my Japanese study guides. I go over textbook reviews, I give you all the tools that you need, but you don't just need textbooks, there's a bunch of different ways. But Chad, how do I start studying? Good question! person inside my head, let's talk about that as well. If we're talking totals, which I believe we are, we have 4,244 different pieces of knowledge that we need to be able to pass the test. That's all words, kanjis, and grammars put together. Well, that seems like a lot. Well, let's kind of break this down a bit. We're gonna break this down into percentages, how much you need to know in each one of those things as a combined whole, which I know sounds dumb. We're gonna take that and break it up into percentages, and then from percentages, we're gonna break that down into days. Now, it sounds confusing, but let's do a little bit of math here. 3,000 words is what percent of 4,244 pieces of knowledge? It's about 70%. Kanji is about 24%, and grammar is only 6%. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna assume you're studying every day because you're trying to cram this in a year. This is not a long-term marathon video. This is a short-term cram video. You study every day. Roughly, that's about 11.6 new pieces of information every single day. You guys know me, I'm not a math person. We're just gonna round down to 10 because it's fun. So out of 10 new pieces of knowledge that you need every day, because we did those percentages, right? So if you're starting from absolutely knowing nothing about Japanese to then going to a JLPT in 1 year, your bare minimum daily thing that you have to hit is 7 words, 2 kanjis with readings and meanings, and 1 piece of grammar. It's way more doable, and you do that over the span of a year, you should be hitting these numbers pretty easily. Now, that's just on knowledge intake. You also have to use said knowledge, the same reason you can watch YouTube videos all day about how to fix your car, but unless you go out and actually try and fix your car, the knowledge won't click. Make sure you have ways of using all this knowledge that you're putting in, such as workbooks, practice tests, etc., and so forth. Again, check out my resources guide, shameless self-promotion. Now, normally I would say, hey, what do you think about this method? But I'm gonna hear plenty of that anyways and get plenty of dislikes. So here's what I wanna know. What would you do with that N2? If you happen to pass it and you had the ability to now apply for a wide variety of jobs in Japan, what is it that you would dream of doing and want to do? I could tell you what I want to do. I would love to sit and skate with my skating friends, to fish all day, and then to guide foreigners around and show them the country I love so much, which hopefully I'll be able to do in the future. But for now, we study for the N2 together. If you guys like the video, be sure to like it down below. It helps me so much in this dumb new algorithm. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments, leave them in the comments down below. I do read all of them. If you like this, check out my other videos, my other live streams I do on Saturdays. I just started a podcast every Monday called the Wicked Miscreant Dungeons & Dragons podcast. All that content, nutrient-dense content, is free. Just subscribe down below or subscribe to my Wicked Miscreant podcast, whichever one you want. And it'll be delivered 2 videos a week and a podcast each week. If you would like to sponsor a video like Ohio did this week, be sure to check out my Patreon. There's a ton of tiers on there that you can become a supporter of all this nonsense. And we here at the circus that is the Chad Zimmerman channel, thank you so much for it. All right, that's it. I will see you guys on Saturday. Continue to study hard, achieve your dreams, exceed your goals, and I will see you next week.